Again, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to start our session now. So if you are going to join us, please find your seat. And today it is my great honor to moderate this session on the press freedom in Southeast Asia, and we're looking on the way forward. So at the panel today, we are pleased to have our distinguished guest speaker. We have Miss Pinpaka Namsom from Voice TV. She's an online editor. We also have Ryan Rosoro. He's from the National Union of Journalists in the Philippines. And also we have our representative from the Indonesian Press Council, Ms. Ratna Komala. And also we have the Ed Legaspi from the Southeast Asia Press Alliance. And so our session today is about press freedom in Southeast Asia and the way forward. Today, we all come here to celebrate the World Press Freedom in 2017, and it reminds us the spirit that press freedom is a vital freedom that can that provide an enabling environment for democracy and human rights to flourish. In fact, the press freedom should be protected and promoted, not be prosecuted. And therefore, as today at the opening remark, the General Director General of UNESCO also emphasized the need and the theme of this year press freedom celebration is about critical time for critical mind. And she called everyone to join our effort to sharpen our mind to defend freedom in not only in our country but the world, so that we can because press freedom are essential element to promote justice and peace. So because of this essential element, we therefore today we have our panelists join us to come and share with us the challenges that the ex-panelists from different countries that have been facing. But not only that, our interest to look at the problem, because I believe that many of us can be familiar with the situation. Hence, our focus today is to look at the existing mechanism, whether this mechanism have been well established to protect and promote press freedom yet, and what are the best way for us to move forward, looking at the national mechanism or even from the informal mechanism that we, civil society like ourselves, can work together to promote the press freedom. So I will start by asking to Ms. Pinpaka, if you can start sharing us, what have been the major challenges or change in Thailand regarding the press freedom compared to past year, perhaps, and where are these changes are heading? Please start.
Okay, thank you very much, and good afternoon, everyone. Actually, I prepared 17 pages of the presentation, but I will go through it quickly, since I think many of you may know the situation in Thailand, that we are facing the challenge of the media freedom and also the role of the media in Thailand decades ago, because we fall into polarization and political turmoil for a decade at least. But how media facing the challenges of their role to work as a media in Thailand, we can describe that there are 2 or 3 factors that challenges us. The first thing first is the related laws and regulations. As you may follow the Thai situation and you may feel familiar with some law, so I will start with the Computer Crime Act that is very active uses by the authorities and also among the people that use against each other. So we have the important article 15 and 14. And you can see that some media keep report about the situation of the usage of computer Kramak. You can follow it from Thai media, such as Prasha Thai. And yeah, this is the recent. And the second, this may be the famous one, the section 112 or article 112, or in another name, Les Majes law, that is being used in the past several years in Thailand. And the problem of the section 112 or Les Majes is it is used broadly. As you can see, the recent case of the Les Majes law in Thailand, a man gets suspended jail term for defaming ancient queen, and this queen is she was alive 1,000 years ago. Yeah. Still, someone facing a jail sentence because of that. This is the queen in the 1,000 years ago. Okay. And we have the panel code, some important section like section 116 that against the state, and 167. This one I want to address. I would like to address this one because you cannot hear me. Okay. Hello? Yeah. Is it better? Okay. This one, you may not see it being reported because the censorship is in the newsroom. So myself, as an editor, I have to be careful when we report about the court sentence or the cases that being verdict by the court in Thailand. And offense of defamation. And a part of penal code, we also have the NCPO orders that control the media. And we also have NBTC bill that give the authorities to the Thai national broadcast to shut the media or even suspend some program or the television. We also now going to have media bill that aim to register media crew. So if this bill pass, I and other colleagues have to register to the government body, and we cannot work as a media or reporter without license. So we also have a regulatory body, as you can see from the slide. And a part of that, we have monitoring body that work actively, and this is not how to say, it is not like being addressed in the media. I can separate it to category: the governmental body and governmental support body. For the governmental body, there is a military media monitoring unit, which is very active. And for the station that I am working with like now, this unit is actively monitor us with the number of the staff is the same number of the newsroom. So they have around 30 staff and monitor the station which has only around 30 journalists. Wow. So the second is the police media monitoring unit, and for the governmental support body is Cyber Scout. So it is like a voluntary work for the good citizen, and they will give the government will provide training for the people who volunteer to work and monitor the people who use online platform or social media. And for the case of voice TV that I'm working with, um, after the latest coup in 2015, 14, sorry. So we have so many coups. Sometimes I forget which year it's taken place. The coup 2014. After the coup taken place, we were shut for a month, and after that we received warning for 6 times, and we were suspended for 7 times, and we have been shut down for 2 times after the coup, and recently last month. And just last week, I received the notice that 4 programs published on our television might be suspended again. So, the executive board decided to arrange the program and stop all the critic program to save all the station. Otherwise, it is not only affect us in terms of press freedom, but it affects us in terms of business as well.
Thank you, Pinpaka, for sharing us the situation of press freedom in Thailand. It seems like there have been 3 factors that affecting the Thailand press media, including first the law and regulation, and you list a number of law or legislation that affect. And second is a regulatory body, and the third is monitoring body. And also, you share a very prominent case that you are working with the Voice TV. And I'm sorry that your TV have been facing a lot of stress, including the suspension and shutdown. So now let us move away from Thailand for a while, but now we turn to our colleague from Philippines. So, Ryan, can you tell us what are the key differences of media situation in Philippines? Yes, please.
Thank you, Sophia. Good afternoon. I think most of you knows pretty well the situation in the Philippines, no, for that, except maybe perhaps the recent developments, no, because my country has been the poster boy of impunity for among the press freedom community. No? But let me refresh to you, no, the situation. No? In the last from 1987 until now, in the last 30 years, there have been about 153 journalists killed. No? 150 of that targeted, 151 rather, no? Because two died in an ambush where they were part of a convoy, the military convoy in 1986. Two of these journalists, but the 151 others, no, were really targeted killings. Only 15 of the 151 or 153 deaths, no, or cases, no, were successfully prosecuted. 15, that's about 10% of total cases, successfully prosecuted in court. But most of those convicted were gunmen. I think only one was a mayor of a town was convicted, no, recently, several months ago. 2 more masterminds are fighting out in court whether they should be indicted or not. No? The Reyes brothers of Palawan who killed Dr. Jerry Ortega, whistleblower. No? 26 cases are more than 20 years old. No? 23-year-old cases, 20-year-old cases. No? Of these 26 cases, only 3 were successfly prosecuted. This is significant because under Philippine criminal law, a criminal case should be filed, no, in court, because if it's not filed, a case is not filed in court within 20 years, no, or else the case prescribes, no. So there are potentially 23 cases that could be prescribed, no? Meaning to say the search for justice will forever be lost. No? So 26 cases. 26 cases are more than 20 years old. So that leaves about 127 cases that happened in the last 10 years. So on the average, we have 13 journalist deaths in the last 10 years in the Philippines. So if you subtract the 32 cases from the massacre in Maguindanao in 2009, that leaves about 9 or 10 on the average in the last 10 years. 9 or 10 journalists killed in the last 10 years in the Philippines. Many of these journalists who were killed were pursuing stories against of corruption, local corruption. Many of these journalists are based in the provinces and regions. No? At least a third are in broadcast. So most of them were pursuing stories of corruption and the complicity of law enforcement officers with illegal drugs, illegal gambling, illegal extraction of resources. No? So in a sense, no, these average 9 or 10 deaths in the last 10 years were a loss to the cause of good governance, in the regions and localities of the Philippines. The bellwether of anti-impunity efforts in the Philippines and perhaps in other parts of the world, no? As an example, in other parts of the world, is the prosecution of the Ampatuan massacre case. No? Although there is now a dedicated court, no? Handling a dedicated judge rather handling the case, no? Still, technically, the trial, the case is still it's at least 7 years already running. No? Still at the bail hearing stage, no? Because under Philippine laws, those indicted for a criminal offense, no? It's a constitutional right to ask the court to grant him or her bail. No? So technically, it's still on bail hearings, although there was an agreement among the prosecution and the defense that the hearings, the proceedings of the hearings will be carried into the trial proper. 2 months ago, the Court of Appeals affirmed the decision of the judge to grant bail to several of the accused, which signals that the case against them may have some weaknesses. No? Although, of course, only one, no? the son of the late Ampatuan, Andal Ampatuan Sr., was able to post bail because there are 58 victims of the massacre, 32 of whom are journalists. For every count of murder, the court allowed $4,000 each count. So that's $232 for the temporary liberty of the accused. So only the Ampatuan, the son of Ampatuan, was able to post bail. No? So that's it. No, in the pre-Duterte Philippines. No, now since July 1 last year, I think there were only 2 cases, no, of killings, no, in the Philippines, all in the provinces, and the current president, no, has established, no, a specialized task force, presidential task force, specializing only on media security, not even media killings, but broaden, no, media security. No? So threats against journalists, killings. No? Although it has not yet, for the last 7 months, it has not yet come up with its own work plan. No? Our union and other media organizations in the Philippines are engaging this body. The biggest threat, no, even as he has committed to look into the problem of media killings and threats against journalists, our president himself is currently the biggest threat to press freedom in the Philippines. In the last 2 months, he has been lambasting the news media, for supposedly misleading reports on his controversial war on drugs. He has been disdainful of the use of human rights as a lens to assessing his controversial war on drugs, his official actions and policies related to the drive, the massive drive against narcotics. This is a campaign promise. This promise helped him to be propelled into power. Apart from the reference to human rights, our president is also disdainful about questions about his wealth. There has been suggestions during the campaign and even up to now that he has accumulated ill-gotten wealth during his 22 years as a mayor of Davao City. And lastly, he has been disdainful of public discussions about his health. Always he said that he has always said that he has been open about his health, the status of the state of his health. But if there are biting questions about this issue, he launches himself he rage against the news media. So three things, always because of this, three things: human rights, reference to human rights as a lens towards looking at his official acts and policies, especially related to the controversial war on drugs, questions about his health, and questions about his wealth. All these, although he strongly argued during the campaign and early in his term that his wealth and his health are matters of private matters, but of course he is now the tenant of the palace. All these three issues are now public. All these two issues are now of public interest, and therefore, because media continue to report on these three issues, we are in the war path with the president. So, if you happen to be covering the president and asks questions, biting questions related to all these three areas, you would earn his tirades, public insult, public humiliation, and over social media, his millions of trolls and supporters would magnify the public humiliation, and that has chilling effect on among journalists, especially covering the president. During a recent roundtable discussion among media leaders in the Philippines last month, this has been brought up, that those covering the palace and the sorties, the provincial sorties of the president, have been telling that, or rather privately, that they have been trying to tone down their questioning on the president about especially about those three issues.
Thank you, Ryan, for sharing us the insight from Philippines. It is a very sad story. A number of journalists have been killed, and somehow probably Philippines among in the region have the highest number of journalists have been killed. And but the issue of impunity probably is not only happen in Philippines, even in Cambodia. When we have so far 14 journalists have been killed, and not all, a majority of cases still pending, no justice, no persecution. So, we share the context of impunity. So, now let us turn to Ms. Ratna. Probably you can share us briefly, as a representative from the national, from the Indonesian Press Council, what is your observation on the press freedom situation in Indonesia, but very briefly, and then we can, move further on, as in your role as a press council, what have been the key initiatives that have been plan and are going to plan to address these challenges that have been affected the press freedom, please.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, and good afternoon, everybody. the turning point for Indonesian press getting the freedom of the press was the momentum of political reform in 1998, which was successfully transitioned from authoritarian new order to democratic reformation order. And it was marked by Press Law number 40 of 1999, which considered as a democratic law. Why? Because the press law, the Indonesian press law number 40, protect the media from intervention, for censorship, and also for closure, for banning media. But of course, we have also challenged in terms of impunity. Within last 20 years, impunity for crime against journalists in Indonesia has been one of the threats for freedom of the press. And based on the Indonesian police data, since 1996 until present, there are 8 cases of journalist murders and every year increasing numbers of violence against journalists. 2015, there were 47 cases, and 2016 increase become 83 cases. And all these cases have been handled among others by 3 ways. First, when the case is connected to the military officer as perpetrators and openly informed to public. And being finally or over compromise and end up giving compensation to the victim, or threat and intimidate the victim in order to cancel the lawsuit. So, and the law enforcement perpetrators of violence against journalists often deadlocked, because either because there is a political pressure or facing difficulties to obtain evidence in the court. So, yeah, Indonesia for the time being like that.
Thank you. So, facing this challenge, what have been the existing initiative that the Indonesian Press Council have been working on and are planning to do to address these challenges?
Okay, Indonesian Press Council to protect or to handle these cases of impunity has already signed MOU with the police, which is to things that we what do you call it, agree. First, to handle the cases which is complaint from the public, it becomes the domain of the Indonesian Press Council. But when it comes to the crime, go to the police. So the police also already, we implemented already until now, and also with the commander of or the military, Indonesian military, we also signed MOU because some cases of violence against journalists done by the military officer. It's because we have different perception about the restricted area in the military bases. For example, when their military plane crash and the journalists covering, they enter the prohibited area. So we have MOU.
Allow the access for
yes.
the journalists.
And I think we hope that with those agreement, those MOU with the police and the military will be, we can handle the cases of violence against journalists until end up with the what do you call it, persecuted.
Persecution.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That sound quite collaborative. That they agreed to sign MOU. But how do you assess this MOU? What is the effect? Have been it helpful at all for the journalists, as you mentioned, or what are the challenges that you have been facing? And also probably you can share with our colleague and audience here, like what are the mechanisms that you can get into, for the police, for the military to come to sign MOU with the press council, so that our colleague can learn.
Yes. So far, with the police already implemented quite well, I think. But with the military, sometimes they have their own military court that, for some extent, they don't openly publish. They don't openly report it to the public. So it still become for us a challenge to make it more transparent.
Okay, thank you, Ratna. Now I turn to Ed. Probably you can just share us a bit, given your role in the region, as a Southeast Asia Press Alliance. What is your observation on the existing mechanism that help to promote press freedom? And then I will turn to our other two speakers, please.
I will start with a comment on why Ryan and Pintaka were chosen here. It's, I think, from SIPA's perspective, it's important to highlight that impunity for violence is one of the two main problems, and the other is the existence of restrictions, which covers many countries in Southeast Asia. So these two restrictions put Southeast Asia in shackles. So if you, for example, if you are familiar with the RSF rankings, Southeast Asia is in the bottom third. The only country in Southeast Asia outside is not a member of ASEAN, that's Timor-Leste. So the emphasis is that there are no guarantees in press freedom. It can roll back when something drastic happens in the political landscape. You have the coup in Thailand in 2014, seeking to make their press restrictions permanent. You have Duterte suddenly becoming intolerant and pressing big problems to the media. However, even though many of it is verbal, it is causing a great deal of stress. And as Ryan said, chilling effect among the media. So yesterday, we had a discussion. This is my task now. I'm here to share the results of the pre-event yesterday on the consultative roundtable to establish a freedom of expression mechanism in Southeast Asia. A mouthful of a title, but the simple result is not that easy, yeah? So we tackled that. In a sense, the short answer to how do you create a roundtable is we have ICHR, the ASEAN Intergovernmental Commission on Human Rights, body of government representatives. But ICHR is not working as it should. For instance, it may have a nominal protection mandate, but it is not able to accept complaints. There's no capability for ICHR. In fact, when it was established, that was one of the first things that SIPA did. We submitted the case of the Maguindanao massacre, which occurred the month following the establishment of ICHR. And then the body meeting in Jakarta, in the ASEAN office, couldn't go out because they don't have that mandate. So it became and that started the mode of work of ICHR. It became the individual tasks of representatives who are willing to engage civil society and accept complaints. So, but then, yeah, so the consensus yesterday was it is not enough. ICHR is not perfect, but we should make it move forward. So the problem is how to make it work as it should. Yeah. So ICHR has a general mandate, and the question yesterday was discussing freedom of expression. by itself, which is like one article of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, 30 articles. And the ASEAN Human Rights Declaration has more articles, and it's still one article on freedom of expression. And just to note that ICHR, the ASEAN Declaration of Human Rights, omitted the phrase across frontiers in guaranteeing the freedom of expression, which means probably that those, although they won't admit it, that you cannot talk among each other on your issues. Freedom of expression can remain in your countries. So how do we do that? We had a session with special rapporteurs from the UN, from the OSCE, from the Americas, and even a representative from the ICHR to discuss the idea of special rapporteurs. It is quite difficult to make a body that will not even accept complaints to outsource that into a special rapporteur. So it's quite, it is possible, but maybe not in the next 5 or 10 years, to be a body of ICHR. So what do we do? Later there was a brainstorming of participants on what are the possible ideas. And I have grouped the ideas into 3 general areas. There is work for civil society groups, including in the media and human rights organizations. There's work for media groups, and there's work for official or semi-official bodies like press councils. The first important work to establish such a mechanism, we felt, the group felt that was, you need to create conditions. You need to make ICHR realize that freedom of expression is important, and it's a big problem in the region. You have to prove your case. You have to, for one, if ICHR asks you how many freedom of expression cases happened last year, only a few countries are able to do that. So what we need to do is to consolidate documentation work of the region, build such systems in countries where those don't exist. Because you cannot really complain if you don't know what you're talking about, right? But it's not just simple country counting of cases, but contextualized analysis so that we know where to start and we can tell ICHR how to start. The second area of work is about collaboration. Collaboration of groups need to happen at the national level. It is not, you cannot talk as a region if you are not complete, or you cannot bring your agenda to the regional discussion if you have competing messages from one country, right? And then the second area of collaboration is about regional cooperation. We need to establish regional projects that will push this forward. There are a number of possible ideas that can take place. But one idea that came out later in the discussion is to cooperate, regional cooperation in each country. You have mechanisms like the UPR. For example, it's to make region-wide submissions on each country of ASEAN, not just human rights groups from within, but cooperation so that you can understand each other better. So, yeah. And the last, because this is a press freedom panel, so we should look at what can be possible in terms of the media. One concrete idea that came out is to have the press councils cooperate. We have 5 countries with press councils. 3 of them are state mandated: Indonesia, Myanmar, and Timor-Leste. The 2 countries are relatively new. Myanmar is just 2 or 3 years old, and Timor-Leste will celebrate their establishment next week. So some of you might be invited there. I'm not. And then there's the voluntary press councils in the Philippines. Mostly associations of publishers. So we need to get these For example, we need to get these press councils to cooperate to address the weaknesses in the existing system, to be able to compare their systems. Maybe it will not be a body to receive complaints, but it will be a body to discuss what are the effective means of addressing complaints, so that it's more constructive and in a way you don't violate ASEAN's non-interference policy. So those kinds of cooperation, you can also address common issues like criminal defamation, which exists in all countries in Southeast Asia, but no one is working on. And it's a problem, a very real problem of journalists. So that's it.
Okay, thank you, Ed, for sharing. And also he tried to brief from yesterday consultation in the morning and afternoon session too. And it is interesting when you highlight one of the possible action could be the cooperation among the press council, but you also highlighted that currently only 5 countries that have press council. So to what extent that this cooperation can address the region issue, and to those countries that have no press council is something that we should debate and discuss further. But I would like to ask Pinparta, what is your assessment and on what Ed have been sharing earlier, certain possible proposal, and to your observation, what have been like the existing mechanism that have been helpful to press freedom, and the way forward for us, from your opinion, what are actions that we need to do more?
I may share the experience of Thai media organization. We have many actually, but I would say that many of media organizations in Thailand, they are good in terms of training or enhance the capacity of the media. We can say that media organizations in Thailand, they are good in terms of conduct the training for the journalists and to enhance the skill of the journalists. But when we talk about the protection of media freedom, I think we are still stuck in the middle of the polarization. When we talk about the press council in Thailand, and you can see the situation that when the press council in Thailand receive the complaint from someone and start to investigate some case, and then the media organization in Thailand who is in the case, they will withdraw the organization from the press council. We can see that it failed to mandate, but on the other hand, we have to look at the big picture of Thailand, that media is part of the political polarization. So it's lack of trust for the press council and also for the media organization in Thailand. I would like to give you one example that happened to my former organization, like prachathai.com. In the case of a political demonstration in 2013, many of journalists have to go to the field to cover the political demonstration by the red shirt. And there are some incidents that the journalists face, violence. And then the Thai Journalist Association, they launched the green tag to protect the journalists. So, but the thing is that at the time, they only provide the green tag for journalists who register as a media with the TJA, like if you work for some newspaper or mainstream media like television, newspaper or radio, but for the new media, online media, or even for the citizen journalists, they cannot access this tag. So when people go to the field and then you have camera and the people cannot do not know that you are the media, and then you take pictures. So you might face some trouble. But anyway, in the case of 2013, we also find another thing, that media also a target of the violence. So in that case, even though you have green tag on your arm, maybe you also can be target when people can see your green tag. And I myself, I received one, and I took picture of the ladies, a group of lady, and she just shout to me that the protester, she just shout to me that she feel disgust when they see when they see the media. That the thing that happened to the media in Thailand. And also when we see the new law, for example, the press bill that I just showed you. Actually, the idea of the press bill, it introduced by the media organization. Actually, they try to find the mechanism or the legislation to give them the mandate to control or supervise other media. But the thing is that when it goes to the hand of the authorities, many things change. For example, the structure of the committee who will look over the media, it will be like appointed by the military and the government. So this kind of thing, we cannot say that media are just a victim of the authority or not the victim of the military, but sometimes because of we're still in the struggle how to deal with each other. Like you can see me like I am not a good media, and you think you are better than me, so you want to control me. But then after you deliver some idea, but you don't have power. But later on, other people who has power will pick up your idea, and then you can see last week all the media have to go out to protest for the press bill. So still the society in Thailand keep critic on this. It's like, okay, you deserve that because you are the one who deliver this idea, and now when military or the junta want to do, who can help?
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Now I turn to Ratna. Do you have any feedback from the conversation so far? The certain proposal that the audience and taking from the yesterday consultation, but also for you to looking forward, how can synergy between global, national, regional, and national initiative can be encouraged here?
Okay. I think
Is it okay? You have to turn.
yeah, I think it's a good idea what Ed mentioned earlier, that from what happened in every country still has big challenge about the impunity, about the press of freedom. So I think this discussion may be good, that we have conclusion to make like action plan, something like that, to empower and make the people aware about the freedom of the press, and also we can share experience, making a training, something like that. And but from my opinion, if the legal system of the country still doesn't allow to, or very authoritarian law, we cannot do much. Just like I heard from Pinpakan. Yeah. I heard also in Thailand, the government can close down the TV station from airing, right? And can open anytime they want. Because the law is allowed to, it's happened. I think it's so hard situation when the fundamental legal still like that. It's so hard to promote the freedom of the press. But I think what we can do from the regional approach, we can make the people aware, and through the media literacy or training, so we can share together what we can do, how we can empower the people and the media to promote the freedom of the press.
Okay, thank you. So Ryan, you have any feedback and idea for us to move forward to protect and promote press freedom?
In the context of the Philippines, let me say three things. Firstly, external mechanisms, whether ASEAN, the UPR process, or any others, that can be thought about moving forward from now. We largely be for political pressure and external political pressure. But of course, currently, in the current political situation, may not, although the President, Duterte, is sensitive to international opinion, but as to the question whether this helps shape his perspective in terms of policy, foreign policy, trade policy with the rest of the world, is still in question. Bashing EU, bashing the UN, bashing the US shows that he does not care. For example, the EU has public pronouncement threatened to review my country's trade privileges, but whether that happens or not, I think Duterte doesn't care. China has offered him to build railways, airports, and what he wants to build in the Philippines. So it's largely that internationally this political pressure. But of course, if Duterte is only there for six years, except if he is able to be successful with this federalization project with the Philippines, there's an opportunity for him to stay longer in power or install his daughter as prime minister or the next president. That could be a possibility. So you have 12 years of Duterte governance in the Philippines. If that happens, but it's a possibility. Or if not, I would say it's a probability. So that's one. External mechanisms would be largely only that for political pressure. But whether it hits him, it shapes policy. It's a big question. Second, so because of that, I'd like to my second point is that the big question, the big challenge, is to strengthen what are existing mechanisms already in the Philippines. One would be the National Human Rights Commission, to give it more teeth. Currently, it has no power to prosecute. It can only investigate, and then the cases the cases that it has investigated will be forwarded to the Department of Justice. And the Department of Justice, as our history has shown, is prone to political pressure, especially in the case, in our experience with the case of prosecuting the Maguindanao massacre. there have been wheeling and dealing, no, between because the Ampatuan clan holds sway, no, politically, not just in the region but throughout the country. No? They have been for several presidential elections. Their support has been key in terms of installing the tenant in Malacanang, no, or the presidential palace. So because of that, no, they are able to wheel and deal, no, with respect to allowing witnesses or having the Department of Justice disallow the admission of witnesses, or even allow or disallow the admission into the witness protection program of several witnesses. No? At least 3 witnesses in that case have died, no? Even before they were presented before the courts. So that strengthened that, gave it prosecutorial powers, no, the National Human Rights Commission, and allow it, no, to have power to hold state agencies accountable, like the police, in terms of building a case, no, against the attack against a journalist, or holding the Department of Justice for delaying the prosecution of cases. One case also in the south, in General Santos City, the city of boxing champ Manny Pacquiao, no? Where there are about 7 or 8 journalists who have been killed, no, in the last 10 years. The witness, no, also a journalist, have lost interest in the case, no? So he wanted out of the witness protection program, and now he has to relocate because the powerful local politician now knew that he was out of the safe house of the Department of Justice, so he has to relocate. No, you have to relocate him somewhere. Now we are problematizing on where he would actually be safe to be relocated. No? So because of the delay, you know, in the prosecution of this case, and there is a law actually in the Constitution, criminal cases should be prosecuted within at least 5 years, the maximum. No? There's a provision in that. No? So if the National Human Rights Commission can be empowered to hold the National Prosecution Service to account for these delays. In the Philippine criminal justice system, no?
Ryan, I'm sorry, due to time, because we are allowed a special audience. You
finally, no.
Now the third, what is that?
Finally, no. Also reforms in the legal frame and the legal system, no. Reform in the rules of court, no. There have been suggestions, no, long before for several reforms in the rules of court, no, to allow, no, successfully prosecute cases, not just against journalists, attacks against journalists, but also against activists and the public in general, human rights violations in general.
Okay. Thank you, Ryan. And it seemed like from all the panelists, highlighting that, it's not just a matter that we need to create new mechanism, but strengthening the existing mechanism. But I'm sure we also discussed it. The challenge within this synergy would be very high, but it does not lose our energy to continue to strengthen that existing mechanism. Somehow before our session, our panelists also discussed and come up with certain concrete idea, because we heard a lot of feedback that mostly the discussion is just about discussion and it's just very overall. But we want to have something concrete out of this meeting, especially from the session that it's about fresh freedom and the way forward. So we share the idea that there's a need to create of course, it's not about creating existing mechanism, but creating kind of regional, I call hub, but our colleague would not prefer. So it's like regional cooperation. So that regional cooperation can look, we should come up with a concrete action plan out of this, but ideally to have a regional cooperation that mandated to 3 areas. First is a dialogue. That dialogue can come with a series of consultation that looking at how to strengthen the existing mechanism, looking at the context of fresh freedom, and find out together what the synergy that we can continue our effort to promote and protect press freedom. And second, under the first mandate of dialogue is probably the team can come up with a fact-finding mission to certain country that press freedom have been facing a real challenge, and this kind of fact-finding mission could be also represent the solidarity among the country, among the partner and the region. And second mandate is to look at the empowerment, because the whole a number of meeting or the discussion as we expose in this World Press Freedom is the question about ethics. It's a question of professionalism and certain area that we journalists themselves also admit that they need further capacity. So the empowerment can help to address this notion, to improve the capacity of the journalists to promote, enabling environment, but also to improve for an independent media. So it can take in the form of training, fellowship, or exchange among the region. The third mandate is to look at, monitoring, research, and advocacy. And this is where it is important in a way that if, we can come up with a regional portal, a portal that can crowdsource the press freedom situation, but looking at the legislation in the region, what are the restrictive legislation that have so far affected press freedom, or the pending code that certain country, for example, during this meeting we have been able to show our solidarity with our Thai colleague, concerning to that draft bill that will affect and having chilling effect on press freedom. The portal can also crowdsource incident. I think we talk a lot, like Philippines have journalists killed, Cambodia journalists killed, Indonesia as well. But what is the picture that we can see? None. So probably if we can have a regional hub that can a regional portal that can crowdsource such an incident, it can become a useful tool as an evidence-based advocacy. And we also discussed the idea of, from this research and a component is to come up with a regional press freedom index. And it could be telling a lot of, everything fine? Well, yeah, so, working on a press freedom index from the region. And of course, there have been existing effort already by the Reporter Without Border or Freedom House. But, to have our own regional analysis, it can tell a complexity and a detailed story about that. And but building on this evidence-based advocacy, we can lobbying at the global, regional, and national level. And this is something that our panelists, want to put forward for our future, our way forward. So I would just end here, and probably now we would like to hear your feedback and question if you have, please. Sorry?
For 20 minutes.
Yeah, we have, I think our session will end by 7:45. So now we have very short time. So let us pick up.
5:17.
Yeah. So, hey, and then the lady over there.
Maaf, boleh saya pakai bahasa Indonesia, Bu? Mungkin Bu Ratna aja mungkin bisa bantu ya dikit ya. Intinya gini, saya Hartanto Bukhari, saya Ketua Umum Persatuan Jurnalis Indonesia, ya. Kalau saya dengar dari teman-teman tadi yang panelis ya yang memberikan penjelasan dikit ya tentang di Thailand, di Filipina apa itu ya. Mungkin itu keadaan-keadaan kita pada saat zaman-zaman sebelum reformasi itu ya. Di zaman sebelum reformasi itu pada saat itu memang hanya ada satu organisasi wartawan, pada saat itu ada juga Dewan Pers, tapi Dewan Pers itu adalah bentukan pemerintah ya. Bentukan pemerintah yang bekerja untuk kepentingan pemerintah pada saat itu. Beda dengan Dewan Pers yang pada era tahun 2003 ya yang pertama. Itu sudah amanat undang-undang nomor 40 tahun 99 ya.
Pertanyaannya Pak langsung.
Pertanyaannya saya ini sekarang ini gimana caranya kita bisa bekerja benar-benar bersama ya di kawasan ASEAN ini ya. Karena dari semua dari data-data yang ada ya di beberapa negara ASEAN itu tidak seperti di Indonesia saat ini. Ya, di Indonesia sendiri pun saat ini yang sebetulnya kebebasan pers sudah dibuka ya. Dewan Pers itu adalah independen ya. Harusnya juga membantu masyarakat pers ya. Tapi pada intinya juga masih ada kekerasan-kekerasan. Jadi sekarang gimana caranya supaya bisa kerjasama di antara ASEAN ini memang betul-betul real, bukan sekedar di tatanan wacana-wacana saja. Terima kasih.
Okay. He suggests that our cooperation in the region, not only in the ideas, but we have to implement it. And how to implement it? We can talk together. We can discuss together. Okay.
Thank you so much. So the lady over there, please.
My name is Vonia, I'm from Timor-Leste. My question directly to Indonesian Press Council. You told that the Press Council, Indonesian Press Council signed MOU with the police and military. How is going on? How is work until now? Because before from Alliance Journalists Independent give report that the freedom of expression in East Indonesia is still bad, and nothing freedom of the press in the area conflict area means. And then correct me if I'm wrong. That Indonesian Press Council, how the budget from state for a press council, right? Mm-hmm. Is this correct? So how you engage the government to seriously to protect the journalists in Indonesia, and then you have to independently to work to protect the media in Indonesia. So please tell us, because you have the press council in Timor-Leste now, so maybe this can share with us in Timor-Leste. And how is going the policy between press council and government in Indonesia? Because the Vice President Yusuf Kala told today in the morning that the government also protect the journalists in Indonesia, but they asking to journalists have to objective in writing, covering story. So how is far it's going?
Okay, thank you. Probably we can pick up another question, and then our panelists can respond. Vishnu? Please try to be short.
Yes, thank you, Sophia. Very short. Yeah, I think Fonia is right that I also question about the cooperation between police and the press council, because police itself become the factor of press freedom violence in Indonesia. Some media monitoring activities also report that police is the most institutions that conduct the freedom of expression, freedom of the press, violence. That is the main problem. And that's another thing from my observations in several countries in these regions. Actually, very, very difficult to find the journalists that all journalists in the nations work together each other. Mostly it's associations not work together but conflict each other. In Timor-Leste, in Indonesia, in other countries, mostly they conflict each other and attack each other.
What do you mean conflict?
Conflict in their way to
compete, you mean?
Yeah, not only compete, but they actually difficult to work together in promoting the press freedom.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
difficult to make these associations work together in promoting that ethics and other things. Why? Because most organizations in this country, they have historical background that's much different, and some associations even become the factor that violates other journalists in the past, like in Indonesia during New Order. Some maybe any organization that even pressure and the other journalists who doesn't join the associations. That's a problem. I think it's a similar problem in other country. This make also if we
can you
see,
try to be brief,
yes.
because
Okay,
then our panel
Right.
will not have time to respond.
In case of impunity promotion, impunity promotions, we always found that media cannot cover this activity because they have no concern about this case. Yeah, what's your opinion about this? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I think
I'm afraid I will forget.
let us have this first round. We will come back later on. So allow the panel to answer mostly the question
Okay.
direct to you. Maybe you can first respond.
First about the police. Yeah, we Indonesian Press Council has signed MOU because of the many cases connected to the police, and also how we handle the cases between Press Council and the police. What we handled, what the Indonesian Press Council handled is a complaint that end up with we never condemn the journalists to go to the court, and the recommendation is right to correct, right to answer, and forgive, right to forgive. And so so far our cooperation, our agreement with the police is already running well. And in the cases of the West Papua, yes, Indonesia has 34 provinces, and based on our research on index of freedom of the press, Papua still what do you call it? Still is like a very sensitive issue there, but only in West Papua. The rest, the provinces, the rest provinces is already quite well. The cooperation is quite well. And about the funding from the government, yes, based on our project, government funding the Indonesian Press Council programs, but it doesn't mean the government can interfere, can control. Why? Because as I said that the law number 40 of 1999 in the legal system of Indonesia is the only law that doesn't have government regulation to enact with. So the spirit of to self-regulate instead. So the role on how we attempt to safeguard and enhance press freedom in Indonesia through self-regulation is played by Indonesian Press Council and Indonesian press community together. And during 6 years, I think we already compiled some regulations produced by or drafted by Indonesian press communities, facilitated by Indonesian Press Council. We have journalism code of ethics. We have complaint filing procedures to the Press Council. We also have right of reply guidelines, standard for protection of the profession of journalists, and standard for press corporation, and standard for journalist organization, standard for press corporation organization, standard for journalist competence test, and distribution guidelines for adult print media, guidelines to cover terrorism. So we drafted the regulation by ourselves. So we regulate ourselves without interfering from government. So that's, yeah, thank God we have press law number 40 of 1999.
And how about I think there are few other questions, like how about, like this morning the Vice President come.
Oh, yes, of course. Indonesian Press Council has function to make a database of the press, press company, to verify the press company, to guarantee that the press company has to protect the journalists in terms of their security, and also their their security and funding, and in terms of salary, welfare, yes, their welfare, and also we ask the press company to enact the code of ethics when in their daily activities to produce news, something like that, and some also requirement for the press company to fulfill that to promote the independency of the press. So yes, of course, what the Vice President said, the press also has to they have freedom of the press, but also responsible, because they have ethics to be fulfilled, ethics to be enacted. I think yeah, we have the right and the responsibility to fulfill.
Okay. Okay, so probably to answer to some of the question too, maybe our panelists, you have any response? Especially, I think regarding to his question, not question but comment that we should not only talk but implement. So probably the idea that we have discussed, and I think CPI is willing to coordinate too. So Ed, you have any input? No?
I will
yes?
not. I will not answer about that because it's should be beyond this room to sit down and talk further and then take the recommendations forward and whatever we can work. Now, I would just like to address Vishnu's concern about disunity among journalists. It's like there are many things wrong with the media community, and the thing is like corruption, ethics violations, and the problem is these are being used by the governments to further restrict the media, yeah, and they can even play journalist groups against each other, no? So that's why to go back to the presentation earlier, national consolidation is very important, no? To achieve some kind of unity, to work on common principles and set political differences aside, no? So that the standard is high, because if you don't do this, like Duterte is famous for saying that if you're a SOB, corrupt journalist, you deserve to die. Those kinds of pronouncements are really pushing us, the journalist community, back, and we have no one else to rely but on ourselves, but to work together on the basis of principles in order to fight back and expand our media freedoms. If we cannot address our weaknesses, then government steps in, like the government of Thailand is doing to regulate the media further and make the restrictions permanent.
So I'm not sure if we still have time for questions. 3 minutes. So if any other last question, maybe. Oh, too many. But maybe let's try to be brief, and then we will the panelists be brief too, and then we will end our session. Please raise your hand again. So there are 3. So maybe giving to the lady first, and then the gentleman there. Yeah, and please try to be brief. Only question.
Yeah, thank you. My name is Dian. I'm from Jakarta. I just want to get the clearance from the Ibu Ratna that you mentioned from the case in Papua is still bad, but you say that it getting better. But I think we can mention about this case because based on the AJI Alliance Journalist Independence still have limited access from the for the journalists, even actually from the abroad journalists, they still have restricted limitation access to enter the Papua area. Maybe you can explain again how is the policy of the Council of Indonesian Press, because it is very important for the press freedom in Indonesia also. Okay. And then the second one is for the.
Can only one question? Sorry, because we have 2 other men, and then for allowing the panel to answer.
Okay.
Thank you. Yes.
Thank you.
So the gentleman. Okay. Then and the last one in front.
My name is Prezarus Menes. I work for community radio. I work for community radio from Timor-Leste. It is interesting to hear about all explanation that coming from the panelists, but I'm really want to know how your institution or your how you work with the community radio in your country, because I know that in Indonesia have a lot of mainstream media, online media, and also community radio. But you know that giving space for the community to use media to express what they think, what they want, through community radio, I think that's the best way we should thinking. How to link, how to empower them to walk in the field. Okay. Because I see that...
Can you brief? So your question is, how do we work with the community community radio?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So.
Yeah, I mean that, like a press council, how you protect the community radio worker,
okay.
and
yes.
then, yeah.
Thank you. So
yeah.
the gentleman, you have the question lastly, in front, please.
Thank you. I'm John Waromi. I'm an author from West Papua. Yeah, here I am with you. I want to emphasize my question directly to all of you, the press from the world, yeah. And my question to Press Council, Ms. Ratna. In May 2015, Mr. Jokowi as a president came to Papua and announced the publicly welcome for international press come to Papua. I myself, last month, there is a victim of 17 person that once lost in the new regency of Mambramo. 3 times published by a main local daily news branch by Jawa Post Group, Cendrawasih Post, down in for 3 times published in the March of 2009. And those 17 persons today still somewhere in the jungle. So the family of the ones of the losing 17 persons last month came to my house and asking for help, make a public announce or a kind of press release.
So can you please specify your question?
Yeah.
Or request?
How about responsibility of the press who once work and not go on public and release that news? Because in 1996, 11 European people came make research in the regency of Timika, and they get hostages by Kelikwalik, and just in 100 days, they've already released by Prabowo with his command. But until today, from March 2009, those still in the jungle, without no responsibility of anyone who become press or maybe military or police who make sign MOU with the press of Indonesia.
So
thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So given time as well, so I would like to give the floor to ex-panelists by, answer briefly if you feel you want to answer, and then you conclude your remark as well. So start from probably given the question mics to you. Maybe you can start first, and then Ryan.
Okay, thank you. About the community radio, actually Indonesian Press Council's constituent, yes, we have television, print medias, online medias, and also radio. But the radio who produce news, who produce journalistic product. So community radio is not our constituent, but if they need to learn or to have something like training how to produce news, how to learn about the journalism principle and code of ethic, we can also help. Indonesian Press Council also give like a training or help the people to learn and to empower their skill to make I think is to produce news for the community, because what Indonesian Press Council handle is mass media for public, not community.
And the issue of West Papua?
Yeah, as I said, in our research on Press Freedom Index, we still found that Papua still has bad index, or not free, not have freedom in terms of freedom of the press. And I cannot say on behalf of the government to state that the policy to handle Papua.
But how about the press
the
council?
Press Council, we help the French journalists the other day to advocate and to release from the police custody. Yes, I think
Maybe you can, because I noticed there's a lot of question about that. So is there any plan that the Press Council is going to do with the case?
Yes, after having the finding of the research index, we have some plan to implement, including the provinces that still have a low index of the press freedom. Yes.
Okay, so maybe detailed action plan probably is worth for discussion between the group as well. And I appreciate that you try to respond this question. So Ryan, you have any last remark? And
let me add on the points for community radio. But this may not necessarily be for community radio, but empowering them to do or upgrading their professional skills to do ethical and better quality journalism is the biggest investment in the longer run, the biggest investment to broaden public ownership of press freedom. I think this should be very important to recognize. I don't know, without meaning to be interventionist, on the Papua issue, I think that would always be. I think I've also followed it personally. We have we in the Philippines have a parallel, almost similar situation when the Moro rebels in the south was still there was a war between 2008 to 2009. What we did was the military also did the same. But what we did was organize joint coverage among local, regional, and national media agencies. We were 60 journalists in all. We barged into the checkpoints of the military, and of course that was 2009, between June and July 2009, and the principal our safety protocol says that there is safety in numbers, and lo and behold, the military was shocked to see that many number of journalists wanting to enter the war zone to tell the stories about the desperation of the people, because the military disallowed even the humanitarian relief operations of international organizations. So these are extraordinary situations when media activism was called for. So because of that, we were able to enter the war zone, and international organizations was able to provide humanitarian relief. I don't know if how you can. That's just an idea that could inspire how Indonesian colleagues can go about the situation in Papua.
Thank you, Ryan. So, Pinpaka,
I
very
can
brief.
reply really quickly because we used to have like around 3,000 community radio stations, but unfortunately after the coup, they all were shut. So nowadays we don't have community radio in Thailand. But before that, many organizations in Thailand, I mean media organization or even like small media NGO organization try to work with them because they also recognize this community radio as a platform to communicate with the community. And in the past, I would say that community radio were active channel for the people in the rural area. I used to work with them, and I received the comment from the community radio that actually in Thailand there are so many languages, but for mainstream media they keep using formal Thai language, and the community radio people just ask us to conduct in the local languages, which we cannot, and they also ask us to like try to adjust ourselves to the community as well. Yeah, but now it's all.
Okay, thank you. Ed, you
Okay,
have
just 2 points. One is to take on Ryan's idea. Maybe it's high time ASEAN journalists test the restrictions in Papua. Maybe we can organize a mission to fact find and investigate. Yes, and then the second point is that SIPA views that the situation in Papua is really just is really basically discrimination, because the rules are applied there more. No, foreign journalists all are required to get permits to enter Indonesia, but then it's not enforced. Like, how many of us are journalists here? Did you get a visa for your entry to attend this? We didn't, right? And then there's discrimination also in terms of how local journalists are treated. No? Papua is the most violent area for journalists, and most victims are local journalists. So it's really a matter of discrimination. So highly appreciate the efforts of the press council, but then it needs to be more than that. The military attitude, which on Papua and West Papua provinces, should change to free the press in Papua. Because until all parts of Indonesian press are free, you cannot really say that Indonesian press is free.
Okay, thank you. So I would not take much time. We over time already, but my last remark is that, in this conference, the theme is, critical time for critical mind. And it seems like we gather a lot of input, but now it's time for us not just critical mind, but critical action. So I hope everyone will take away from our session and, do whatever you can to help to promote and protect press freedom in the region, but also in the world. Thank you so much for your time.